Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Happiest Hour on Earth. Tonight, you are in for a very special episode because we have Shaun from All About Los Angeles on our show, and we are talking everything from Disney history. You're gonna learn a lot of Disney history in tonight's episode. Some really cool things. We're also gonna be talking about filming locations, everything from Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and outside of that. It's gonna be really, really awesome. And so we can't wait for you to hear it. If you notice, if you're watching on YouTube, it's just me tonight. Emily is a couple weeks from having this baby, and we just pre-recorded a couple of episodes the night before last, and so she's been a little tired, as a 9-month pregnant lady would be. So she's taking a little bit of a rest right now as the baby is so close to being here, and so I cannot wait to have Shaun on our show. And if you are listening on a podcasting platform, that is totally cool, but on YouTube we're actually going to be showcasing some photos from some filming locations, Walt Disney Animation Studios, Walt Disney's house, and so much more. But thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go ahead and call Shaun up. Shaun, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you, man? Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, of course. So good to have you on. Like we talked about earlier, Emily is missing tonight. She's like 2 weeks from having a baby. So it's like a lot of resting is needed. And we've been like prepping, we've been recording in advance. So we just did 2 the other night. But you know what? I'm stoked to have some bro time because this is just going to be a great episode.
We have a lot to talk about, man. And we've been friends for a long time. And I can't wait. And the viewers are going to love it.
Yeah, man, I'm so stoked. So for our listeners who might not know about yourself and your page, can you tell us a little bit more about, what is All About Los Angeles?
Hey, everybody. My name is Shaun. I run a brand called All About Los Angeles, mainly on Instagram, but you can find me on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter, and also Facebook, All About Los Angeles. But my motto is History Revisited, where I go and I revisit history, whether it be where your favorite movie was filmed or where your favorite band once stood. And I mean, from 1923 to 2023, there's history all around you. And what I do is I recreate history with a then and now format, and I get the exact pose from either a band photo shoot or a movie scene. And I've been all around the country, but I started this page due to Disney history, and the Happiest Hour on Earth is a Disney themed podcast, and we're going to talk a lot about the Disney side and all about Los Angeles. Disney was founded in Los Angeles in 1923. Walt Disney moved from Kansas City to Hollywood, and there's a lot of Disney landmarks that still exist close to 100 years later. So we're going to talk all about that. But yeah, check out the page, All About Los Angeles, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.
I love that about your page. It's so crazy to see something from, decades ago, and then you in that same exact spot nowadays. It's crazy how sometimes it looks like it's changed, sometimes it looks like it doesn't, but just having that side by side is just so cool. So definitely go check out All About Los Angeles. But yeah, like you said, since we are a Disney podcast, we got to start off by asking about some amazing Disney locations that you've visited. Everything from Walt's apartment, his Los Feliz house, the Walt Disney Animation Studios. Like, what were those experiences like?
Yeah, so I've been very involved in the Disney community for a long time. My first trip to the park was in 1992, and then in my early to mid-teens, I really joined all the fan sites like Mice Chat and Vision's Fantastic, and I talked to a lot of those Mice Chat members today. They're very nice people, but I was very involved. So there's a lot to talk about. I've done a lot of Disney-related adventures, and let's start about it in chronological order. So, Walt Disney moved from Kansas City to Hollywood in 1923 to his Uncle Robert's house, which is on Kingswell Avenue, 4406 Kingswell Avenue. Walt Disney moved into his Uncle Robert's house, and that house is still there today. It was recently bought by Walt Disney's granddaughter, there was an overseas developer that bought the land and was going to demolish the house, and the city and all these fans came in to say, no, you can't do that. So the deal didn't go through. Walt's granddaughter bought it, and there's a big construction wall around it today, and a big like billboard that has like a little paragraph of the history. And
Whoa, man.
so Walt Disney lived there for a couple months in his Uncle Robert's garage, which doesn't exist on the property anymore. Dave Smith, the archivist, brought that garage and moved it from Uncle Robert's house in Hollywood all the way to the Stanley Ranch Museum, which is about a couple miles away from Disneyland,
Oh
and it's
my
open
God.
on every Sunday, and you can visit the garage where Walt Disney started his animation before the Kingswell studio, which we'll get to next time. But the very first, where he first started his animation, the Disney company, the garage is at the Stanley Ranch Museum in Garden Grove, a couple miles away from Disneyland. But Dave Smith, the archivist, rest in peace, Dave Smith.
Yeah.
He was the founder of the Walt Disney Archives. There's no other company than Disney that really cherishes their history and heritage. Disney
Yeah.
loves their history. They love their heritage. They're number one with that.
That's awesome. And then so they
So
also moved to, right? Didn't he have that studio on Kingswell Avenue, which I think is like a skateboard or like tattoo shop or something like that now, right? Like, and it was
right.
like a newspaper copy and print place for a while. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's a few blocks away from Uncle Robert's house. So I assume Walt Disney walked there because it wasn't too far. He either walked or drove a short distance, but it's on the same road. It's on Kingswell, and it's two buildings currently. It was one building back in the day, but it's
Oh,
two
okay.
buildings currently, and it's a skateboard shop on the left and a mom and pop like copy shop where you copy papers and stuff, fax papers,
Yeah.
called Extra Copy. 4647 Kingswell Avenue is the address. And so there's a couple pictures of Walt Disney standing out front of that building that you can line up today. You can line up the bricks, you can line up the crack in the brick, the tree. So yeah, Walt Disney was at the Kingswell shop from 1923 to 1926, 27,
Yeah.
and he started growing. The Alice comedies took off, and he
Yeah.
started growing, so he needed a bigger studio. So he got a bigger studio at 2719 Hyperion Avenue. The land still exists. They
Really?
tore down that studio a few years after Walt Disney moved from it in 1940, 1939, 1940,
Yeah.
where the current Disney Studios is in Burbank. Been there since 1940. But 2719 Hyperion Avenue was the second Disney studio.
Is the building
And
still there, you said, or is it no longer?
no,
Oh, it just got
no,
demolished.
no longer there. But you can line
Man.
up like it's the same plot of land, so you can
Yeah.
line up where it once was. There's a plaque on the telephone pole outside on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
and there's a plaque on the inside of the Gelson's. It's a Gelson's supermarket.
Oh, really?
It,
So
it
in the store, you could see a
yeah.
little plaque saying something about Disney.
Yeah, it's a Gelson supermarket currently, and but that was the land where Mickey Mouse was created, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was created, all the beloved classics back in the 30s,
That's
and
crazy.
and Walt Disney lived a couple blocks from that studio. He had a couple houses.
Yeah.
All of his houses exist around Hollywood except for Carrollwood, the house that he lived in last. That doesn't
Okay.
exist anymore.
Oh,
But
man.
he lived. There's a high school that you could see in a lot of photos of the Walt Disney Studios on Hyperion of John Marshall High School in the background. So if you're right next to John Marshall High School, one of Walt Disney's homes that he built out of a home building kit on Lyric Avenue, him and his brother had symmetrical homes right next to each other. But they say that's the garage where Mickey Mouse was created. There are two people that drew Mickey Mouse. A lot of, Walt Disney gets all the credit, like, Tom from MySpace, although there was about 50 other people that created MySpace with Tom, but Tom's the face. Or Mark Zuckerberg, he's the face, but there's a
Yeah.
team of people. So, there are two people that drew Mickey Mouse, Walt Disney and Ub Iwerks.
Yeah.
So Ub Iwerks drew Mickey. A lot of people don't know that. We know that being Disney fans, but
Yeah.
to the viewers tuning in, they're probably learning something new. So yeah, so after the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Mickey Mouse, all that money that was used from Snow White was used to buy the land and build the current studios in Burbank. And there's a big building, the Michael Eisner building, with the Seven Dwarfs kind of holding up the building.
Yeah.
because they paid for that land. So they're holding up the building because the dwarfs, Snow White, paid for that studio lot. Being at the Walt Disney Studios, I've been there a handful of times, and you have original sound stages. You have soundstage number one, which is the Annette Funicello stage, and that's where they filmed the original Mickey Mouse Club.
Oh
That's
my
the
gosh.
stage with the underwater water tank where they filmed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Man.
And then across from that, you have soundstage two, which is the Mary Poppins stage, and that's where they filmed Mary Poppins. There's a plaque on this soundstage. They filmed the Princess Diaries there. They
Really?
also filmed, yeah, Princess Diaries,
That's
which is
good.
we'll talk about San Francisco. There's a bunch of Princess Diaries locations in San Fran
Yeah.
that I went up to
Man.
go see. Great movie, Princess Diaries.
Yeah. It's crazy that
But
it was in the same place that Mary Poppins was filmed too. It's kind of crazy. That must have been so cool to be in such like a historic place, you know? That's so awesome.
Yeah, and it's a couple other things that Soundstage was used for was Miley Cyrus's rehearsal for her Best of Both Worlds tour concert.
Oh man, that's awesome.
So that's where she rehearsed everything. You could see it in the special features of that DVD, the Best of Both Worlds 3D concert DVD.
Yeah.
There's a video clip of her rehearsing, and I was watching. I'm like, whoa, they're in Soundstage 2 at the Disney Studios
Dude, that's crazy.
rehearsing. So being in LA, I
Yeah.
have an eagle eye for LA. When I watch stuff, I'm so familiar with LA. I
Yeah.
can recognize a lot of stuff just by
Dude,
looking at it.
that is so awesome. I've seen your
Yeah.
photos like in the Walt Disney Animation Studios too, where it's like a street sign that Walt was leaning on or something like that, and then you're right at that street sign too. Like that is so cool. The grounds are just so beautiful at that animation studio.
It's stuck in time. It's
Yeah.
stuck in time from 1940. Most of the original buildings are there. And Walt Disney passed away at the hospital across the street
Oh man.
from the studio. The St. Joseph Hospital is where Walt Disney passed away. But
Man.
if you walk in the animation building, it kind of looks like a doctor's office or a hospital because Walt Disney said if the studio failed, he would have sold it to the hospital. It would have went under, and the hospital would have bought it and
Oh my.
expanded. So he kind of made it look like that. So
That's
they
crazy.
say. That's the tale. Um,
Man.
and also going back to Soundstage 2, they built all the Disneyland vehicles in there, Autopia, the
What?
Mark Twain hole, the shell of that. And you
Dude.
have the Home Improvement stage where they filmed Home Improvement and the TV show Blackish and tons of random productions. And also
Yeah.
Disney will use other sound stages in other studio lots for their TV shows. I went to a taping of some Disney XD show called Mighty Med, and they
Oh man.
filmed it at the Hollywood Center Studios, which was the old Zoetrope Studios from Francis Ford Coppola. It's been through a lot of different owners.
Yeah.
So that's that.
At the Walt Disney Animation Studios, I know we talked about this, but you haven't been in Walt's office. Have you walked past it?
Yeah, it's on floor 3, and that's the only place I've never been to was
Oh, the
Walt's
floor.
office.
Have you been on the
Yeah,
floor?
so
Or
yeah, so you can walk through the waiting room and
yeah,
see kind of where it was and see the double doors that go down. But
yeah.
that's where he spent a good 26 years in that
Man,
office from 1940 to 1966. He spent that amount of time in that office. So a lot of personal time in there.
man.
It's sacred ground, I call it,
Yeah,
and it's a real honor and a pleasure to walk that ground anytime I can.
yeah.
And
That's so
yeah, it's
awesome.
it's it's very awesome. But the story ends. The story ends at a cemetery called Forest Lawn Glendale,
Oh, wow.
where Walt Disney's buried at. His ashes are interred at the plot of land. You got his headstone that has his name, has his wife Lillian's name, and his
Man.
daughter Sharon and his husband. I'm not sure where Diane is.
Yeah.
She might, there's no public knowledge of where Diane is laid to rest or anything.
Oh,
But
interesting.
The Disney family plot is a few miles from the Disney Studios at Forest Lawn, Glendale.
Oh
Walt
man.
Disney's ashes.
Anyone could walk in there and just see like his
Yeah,
tombstone and everything.
yeah.
Wow.
So I have a video on my YouTube on how to get there. If you watch it, I
Oh,
walk
that's
from
awesome.
my car all the way to the grave, and I show you how to get there. And
Dude.
if you want to go visit these cemeteries to visit Walt Disney or Roy Disney, there's tons of other iconic names also at the cemetery.
Yeah.
So just around Walt Disney, you have Michael Jackson is nearby at the same cemetery,
Whoa.
Elizabeth Taylor, Clark Gable, and also Walt Disney's parents are buried there. I've been to Walt Disney's parents' grave sites, Flora and Elias Disney,
Yeah.
and there's no doubt that Walt Disney visited those graves.
Dude.
While he was alive.
Yeah. I bet that's
Next time you come to
so
LA,
surreal.
you have to have a Disney LA. Like we should do something.
Okay, yeah, no, that'd be great. I know. I feel like we always go down there, go to Disneyland, and then kind of book it back home. But I'm like, we need like a day or two to just see some locations. Like we've done some filming locations in the past, like The Office, Parks and Rec, a couple other like movies that we just love. Three Stooges, we've done that, but we haven't set aside another time to just do some like Disney. Actually, no, we did do like the Kingswell Studio one time. We drove past the animation studio, didn't get to go in, unfortunately. But yeah, one day we just need to dedicate some more time to that. But the house in Los Feliz, because there's that photo of Walt up on the staircase. I just need to know, like, you don't need to say how you got in, but was that crazy to be in there? Because there's so many portraits of Walt Disney in that house. And so it must have been so weird to walk the halls, see the pool. I don't know if the pool is still there, but I remember there's a lot of video footage of him in that pool at that house, right?
So yeah, the house on Walking Way, Walt Disney built that house. He lived there from 1932 to 1950, and it was after the success of Mickey Mouse, and but he lived in that house during Snow White. So there's a story that that house and the architecture and the style influenced a lot in Snow White, like Snow White's cottage. There's Walt Disney's favorite restaurant. It's called the Tam O'Shanter, which is a couple miles away from the Disney studios, but Walt Disney always ate there. They call it the studio commissary, quotations, because Walt Disney always ate there. The Tam O'Shanter, still in operation today. And they say that Walt Disney's table is still there. There's a plaque on it that said Walt Disney used to sit here with his Imagineers. And there's a bunch of pictures of Walt Disney on the walls. And there's artwork and animation cells on the walls at the Tam O'Shanter in Los Angeles, a couple miles away from the studios.
Do you know what his favorite meal was there? Like, do they had to keep it on the menu?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but I know that there's a drink that he always got, and it's called the Table 31. I'm not sure what's in it, but it's called the Table 31 on the menu because that was his Table 31. Still exists today.
Have you had it? Okay.
No, I haven't. I usually get the brisket sandwich and like an
Nice.
IPA or something.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's awesome, man. So that's pretty close to the Walking Way house.
Yeah. Couple stoplights. Yeah, the Walking Way house. Walt Disney was there from 1932 to 1950, and there's a bunch of pictures of him inside that house. Dude. You got the iconic stairwell photo.
Yeah,
that was his room. That was behind him. So that was a young Walt Disney. So that was probably the early mid 1930s because unfortunately the smoking habit really got to him, and you can kind of tell by his age. What year that was.
Man.
And, we've always seen that famous photo of Walt Disney kind of peeking through the doorway. Yeah. There's a shadow of Mickey Mouse there's a silhouette of Mickey Mouse on the wall. Yeah. Walt Disney's kind of peeking in the doorway. Everyone thought that was the Hyperion Studios in LA, but the Walt Disney Archives went through the actual blueprints of the Hyperion Studios, and they couldn't find anything that matched that kind of doorway and that kind of wall and that kind of dimensions.
Yeah.
So they realized that photo was taken at Walt Disney's Walking Way house and not the Hyperion Studios. And that's probably crazy. The most iconic photo of Walt Disney.
Yeah.
It's on the cover of Walt Disney's official biography. By Bob Thomas, and that's the cover photo, and that was at Walt Disney's Walking Way house. So how I got in was they give public tours a few times a year. If you follow Walt Disney's Storybook Mansion on Facebook, they post when they give public tours. And the first time I went there was a cocktail party with Disney Imagineer and Disney legend Bob Gurr.
Oh my
and
gosh.
it was for his book release, and I
Dude,
was
that
there
is
in
so
late
awesome.
2019.
Okay, now I need to follow that page. That is so great. So
Walt Disney's Storybook Mansion on Facebook. They
who
post
does
stuff a couple
Disney
times a
own
year.
it? Or
So the guy
just
that
private?
lives there,
Yeah.
the guy that lives there is the director of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, Timor,
What?
and he has a long last name, can't pronounce it, but he owns the house, and he got in touch with a few Disney enthusiasts
Yeah.
who know the history of the house, so he kind of leases the house to these people,
Dude.
and he probably makes side money from this,
Yeah.
but they open it up to the public a couple times a year. It's about 150 for a 2 hour experience, but
Okay.
it's once in a lifetime
Yeah.
in Walt Disney's home that has never been seen before. Probably before 2019 has never happened.
I mean, does it look modernized because that guy owns it, or are there certain areas that still look kind of what you would expect it did in the 30s? Like,
So
is it
you were
still?
talking about the swimming pool. The
Yeah.
original swimming pool was sold off.
Oh, okay.
That there was a chunk of land that included the swimming pool that was sold off to the house down the hill. So the
Oh,
backyard is much smaller than what it originally was, but
okay.
you do have a current swimming pool that used to be lawn. But you have the original playhouse that Walt Disney got his two daughters, Diane and Sharon, and there's tons of pictures of Walt Disney playing in that playhouse with his daughters. But that original playhouse is still in the backyard of
What?
that home.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is I know there's like a lot of videos of Walt with his train set that he used to ride around. Is that the Walking Way house or is that a different house?
No, that's the Carolwood
That's
house that does
Carewood.
not
Okay.
exist anymore.
Oh
And we'll
man.
talk about that in a moment,
Yeah.
kind of more of the railroad. But going back to the Walking Way house, Walt Disney's daughters, they say, their daughters say that was the house they grew up in.
Yeah.
They were born into that house all the way to graduating high school. And I saw
Dude,
both of their rooms, Diane and
man.
Sharon's room, and it's just surreal to just think about all the history. This is 2019, this is 2023,
Yeah.
but when you're thinking 1935, 1940, in that exact space,
Yeah.
thinking of that time, it's a very weird feeling you get. Everyone listening right now, I encourage you to go find a historic landmark or a movie location, or find a picture of where a famous person once stood,
Yeah.
and feel the energy standing where they stood. So we think of
Totally.
Walt Disney as a myth or a legend, but to know that he stood here, there's a photo proof to prove it that he stood right here. It's
Yeah.
just crazy to think about.
Almost like Walt's apartment too, that light that is still on in the apartment, like even from the outside it feels like you could feel his presence, but inside there, inside his house is like, oh, it must be so insane.
Yeah, so Walt's apartment, that was the second building built at Disneyland. It took 1 year to build Disneyland, and Walt Disney would fly from helicopter or drive down to visit the construction, but he would stay at the apartment. That was the second building built, and he would stay at the apartment to overlook the construction. The
That's
first building built was the Opera House,
yeah.
where Mr. Lincoln is. That was the first building built, and that was a lumber mill for the construction. And then it was
Man.
Walt Disney's apartment, the fire station, as building number two. So, it's crazy to think that Walt Disney only saw 11 years of Disneyland, in
Oh man.
1955 to 1966.
Yeah.
And, they give apartment tours during the Walt Disney Main Street Story Tour.
Yeah.
Um, and they give you an opportunity to tour Walt's apartment up there and a photo op. And there's a bunch of pictures of Walt Disney you can line up of him up there spending sacred time with his family. You have his
Man.
bathroom, you have his original grilled cheese maker, his Tom and
What?
Jerry cups.
Oh my
Diana
gosh.
Sharon's baby bottles are in there in the cabinet up there, and
What?
they'll show you all those items during the tour.
Dude.
But I recommend you take the Walt Disney's Main Street Story Tour for a chance to peek inside Walt's apartment on Main Street. Holy Grail, because before like 2012, they never gave any, it was very secretive and nobody got up there. But probably 2012 was the first time they opened it up to the public.
Man, that's crazy. I heard, because you brought up his bathroom, I heard from someone else who did the tour didn't he have like a lot of different shower heads in his bathroom? Like, isn't there tons of shower
Yeah,
heads, right?
yeah.
Are they just like
So
seven vertically, or like how's that work?
something like that. Yeah, the bathroom's all original. It's crazy to just stand in there and look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that shower head was futuristic back then, and Walt Disney was always ahead of his time, trying new gadgets and gizmos. So that was the new futuristic shower head back then.
That is so awesome. Is it crazy to look out that window and like look at people at the park? Because you almost imagine Walt doing that, right? Like looking out and seeing people enjoy his creation, his original park. But can you get a good vantage point from that window where that lamp is?
Yeah, because you're looking in Walt Disney's point of view,
Yeah.
and so many people have looked through that window over the last close to 70 years. It's just incredible to get that same point of view because Walt Disney was looking out that window on opening day, looking at all the people come in. So you're looking at the same view 68 years later.
Dude.
It's very surreal, man. Walt's apartment. Um, and there's only a couple original items there, like I was mentioning, the grilled cheese maker. You
Yeah.
got Diane and Sharon's baby bottles, but Lillian Disney died 32 years in one day after Walt Disney passed away in
Oh my
'97.
gosh.
December. Walt Disney passed away December 15th of '66, and Lillian Disney passed away December 16th, '97.
Man.
But when Walt Disney died, Lillian Disney took all of the items from the apartment and rarely visited Disneyland after that. Maybe a handful
Wow.
of times, or
Yeah.
even less than that.
Wow.
But it was too close to her to even visit after Walt passed. But
Yeah.
she took all the original items, so there's not too much left up there other than just the same air, the same space.
Yeah.
But
Wait, where are those
some of
items now? Are those like just part of the family now, or do you know where those items went?
yeah, so some of the family members still own a lot of the items, but
Okay.
some of the items are also on display at the Walt Disney Family Museum
Oh, that's
in San
right. Yeah.
Francisco,
Yeah. That's right.
and that's in the lobby. Everybody listening right now, you need to visit the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco at the Presidio. It is a great museum all about Walt Disney's life from beginning to end. It is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company, but it is owned by the Disney family,
Yeah.
by the family members, and you have, a couple items that you could see. You have about half of Walt Disney's Academy Awards. Did you know that Walt Disney was the single holder for the most Academy Awards? Walt Disney holds the record for the most Academy Awards won. I believe the
Man.
number is 32. There's a lot of cool items that you could see in the museum. You have the Oscar from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs
Yeah.
with the seven little dwarf Oscars that Shirley Temple presented Walt Disney.
Dude.
So that Oscar's on display specifically. You have the earliest drawing of Mickey Mouse on
That's
display
right.
that they
Yeah.
say that's on display. And you also have Walt Disney's train, the Lily Bell, that was in his backyard on Carrollwood Avenue, on his house, in his backyard. That the train circled around the backyard, and he had a barn. Walt Disney had a barn that he worked on that train in. Walt Disney was a big train enthusiast,
Yeah.
but one of his fellow animators named Ward Kimball is the person responsible who got him into his love for trains.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. And isn't there can you go to, maybe it's not the barn that he worked on it on, but isn't there some sort of Disney history with trains at like the Carrollwood area?
Yeah,
Is that
so
yeah.
so Walt's Barn is actually at Griffith Park. It's open on the third Sunday of every month, and you can actually visit the
Oh,
barn, open from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The first Sunday, or no, the third Sunday of every month. The
dude.
barn is open, and there's a lot of pictures of Walt. Even though the barn is not in the same location, it used to be in the backyard.
Yeah.
It's the exact same barn. There's a lot
Dude.
of pictures of Walt Disney that you can line up outside that barn, and it was moved from Walt Disney's home on Carrollwood to Griffith Park by his
Man.
daughter in 1999. So you could visit Walt's barn where the Lily Bell actually circled around and was maintained It's in Griffith Park. And
Dude.
going back to trains, people always ask me, what was the very first ride at Disneyland? What was the very first attraction at Disneyland? It was the Disneyland Railroad. That's
Man.
why Walt Disney wanted Disneyland. He wanted the train to go around and build within the tracks because he was a big train enthusiast. So that's why he wanted Disneyland. He wanted the train first and
Yeah.
build within.
I
So the
love that,
Disneyland
dude.
Railroad was the first attraction.
That is honestly like every time me and Emily always say this, but every time you ride the railroad, you feel you're just like in the Walt Disney history. Like it's just such a great way to see the entire park and ride something that Walt Disney actually rode. The other crazy thing too is that just a few months ago, I believe, we went to the Griffith Park merry-go-round, and that's like history in and of itself. But I didn't realize at the time that his barn is in that area too. I mean, Griffith Park is huge, so it's probably a little drive away because we went to the zoo area, like the old Los Angeles Zoo, and then we went to the merry-go-round. Is the barn kind of in the area, or is it a little bit further of a drive?
Yeah, no, it's really down the road in that same area.
Okay.
So it is nearby. But yeah, going back to the carousel,
Yeah,
that's where Walt Disney got the inspiration for Disneyland, the exact same carousel.
dude.
And have you ever ridden that carousel?
So every time we've gone twice. It's always closed because we go. I don't. It's only on the weekends, right? For a short time.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's why I miss it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Have
It's
you
like
been on it?
$2 a ride. It's fun. It goes fast. I mean, you feel the
Really?
G-force, man. You feel like you're gonna fly off the horse. The one at Disneyland and like other kiddie theme parks
Yeah.
are very slow, but that one goes fast.
Okay,
It's a
we
lot of
have to
fun.
go on a weekend sometime. That's
And so,
awesome.
the story for Disneyland goes that Walt Disney was sitting on a bench at Griffith Park merry-go-round
Yeah,
eating peanuts, and that's where he thought of the idea for Disneyland because he wanted a place where children and parents could have fun together.
yeah,
We don't know they don't know the exact bench. He could have sat on any of the benches,
yeah.
but there's three of those. As far as my knowledge, there are three benches that exist. Um, One is at the Opera House on Main Street.
Oh yeah,
They say that is the bench. It could be, it could not, but that bench was definitely there during that time.
yeah,
Also, another bench is at the Walt Disney Family Museum on
yeah,
that walkway. You see the Golden Gate Bridge with the glass,
yeah.
and you could see it through that tunnel. So there's one there.
Oh yeah, there's one
Uh,
there, and then those are the two I know about. There's a third one. Is there?
yeah, I believe it's in private hands.
Oh, okay,
So
okay. The cool
private
thing about
hands.
the Walt Disney Family Museum one is that you could actually sit on that bench, where in the Opera House you can't, right? Isn't it kind of blocked off, right,
Right.
in the Opera House? Yeah.
Yeah, so going back to Griffith Park, if you want the most bang for your buck,
Yeah.
movie locations within a small area, Griffith Park and the Griffith Observatory nearby is a great way to start. The baseball field in the beginning of the movie Hook,
Oh yeah.
where Robin Williams parks his car and gets out and runs up that hill and sees the baseball field.
Yeah.
That's Griffith Park.
Oh,
You got the Griffith Observatory. You got La La Land was filmed there.
that's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes Man was filmed there.
Yeah.
Tons of movies up there. It was the Springfield Observatory in The Simpsons. It's also in Grand Theft Auto 5. Grand Theft Auto 5.
Dude.
So, Griffith Park is a great place if you want to visit movie locations.
Yeah.
Start at Griffith Park and the Griffith Observatory. You can Google search Griffith Park movies and find tons of places. So that's where you want to start at. Also, the Griffith Park golf course is the site, and there's a plaque there that commemorates the site. It's the site where Babe Ruth got traded from the Boston Red Sox to the New York Yankees, starting the
Dude.
birth of the curse. Once the Red Sox traded Babe Ruth
Yeah.
to the Yankees, the Red Sox never won the World Series until 2004. And
Man.
there's a plaque at the Griffith Park golf course that says this is where that trade happened. You have the end of the movie Jerry Maguire there. Also, it shows the same baseball field that was in Hook.
Oh,
Going back to you visiting the LA Zoo, the end of Anchorman, where
Anchorman.
he goes in the bear cave. That's the old LA Zoo.
That's so good. Yeah, I remember that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I wanted to go there. I think also like a scene from Parks and Rec was filmed there too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So when it comes to Disney movies, like most are animated, and we assume that a lot of live action movies were filmed on a set. You're talking about soundstage too, but are there any filming locations outside of the studios, whether it's Disney, Star Wars, or Marvel, that you have visited yourself?
So yeah, so if anyone that wants to visit any Star Wars movie locations is in Death Valley, California. You can
Oh
visit the actual Tatooine from
yes.
A New Hope. So the very beginning of The New Hope, where R2D2 and C3PO are walking through the Jawa Canyon, that is in Death Valley, California, where you can visit
Dude,
yourself.
that's crazy. That's awesome. And I saw the photo too. Like you found literally the exact location in Death Valley. Wow, it's just crazy.
Yeah. And that's cool about those locations. Like it's an actual movie set. Like you can line up the mountains and the rocks and like
Yeah,
stuff that will never change for millions of years.
yeah,
And it is a movie set. You can line up where all the Jawas were, where C3PO and R2D2 rolled through, going to
dude,
Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. Like that's all in
man.
Death Valley. And it's an easy Google search, folks, if you want to visit Star Wars locations in Death Valley. It is a mission. You're driving 4 hours from Los Angeles. You get no cell phone service.
Oh
There's
my
only one
gosh.
gas station there. And it's about $10 a gallon. So you just have to prepare and really prepare. You don't want to go out during the summer when it's 130 degrees. And
Dude.
but if you want to visit Star Wars locations, go to Death Valley. So that's there. Go there. You also have a place called Alabama Hills where they filmed the iconic Jericho scene in the movie Iron Man
Oh
with Robert Downey
yeah,
Jr.
yeah,
So in the movie Iron Man, it takes place in Afghanistan
yeah,
where they have it's the big missile rocket launch test. And you
yeah.
see the big mountain range in the background. That's Mount Whitney. That's
Dude.
Alabama Hills, California. And you can camp right there. That spot where
Oh,
that scene was filmed from Iron Man is a designated campsite where you can
what?
camp right there where they filmed that scene.
That's
And it's a
like where
very
they're
iconic
testing the
scene.
missiles, right?
Yeah,
And he's
in
standing there.
the desert, in the middle of nowhere. That's Alabama Hills, California, about
That's
4 hours away from LA, and you can camp there, set up a tent,
dude, that
camp
is
right
so
there.
awesome. I love
That's
that.
a legal camping spot. And then let's see, I've been to a couple real life locations from the movie Cars. My brother was living in Amarillo, Texas for a bit, and I found out that there are two real life Cars locations around that area. So I went to a place called Cadillac Ranch, which
Okay.
is physical Cadillacs sticking out of the ground. And it's an art piece, but that inspired the Cadillac mountain range of Radiator Springs. So
That's
like
crazy.
when you see the mountain range in Radiator Springs, you can see the Cadillacs sticking out. And that's the inspiration from Cadillac Ranch in Amarillo, Texas. So I had
That's
the opportunity to
awesome.
go there. And then there's another location. It's called the U Drop Inn, the U Turn Inn, I think,
Okay.
is the real life. It's the real life Ramones Body Shop,
Whoa, that's
and it's
crazy.
it's
That's
in
in
a town
Texas?
called yeah, it's in a town called Shamrock, Texas. It's in the
Dude.
middle of nowhere on Route 66, about halfway between Amarillo, Texas, and Oklahoma City. And that's the real life Ramones Body Shop. And two Disney locations that I went to in Salt Lake City, Utah. You have, I mean, it wasn't filmed there, and it was not the inspiration, but it was built for as the inspiration from Up. But the real life Up house is in
Oh,
Harriman, Utah, and it looks exactly like the movie. Whoever built that house, they modeled it after straight from the movie. So if you want to visit the
dude.
real life Up house, it's in Harriman, Utah. And then also, if you're in Salt Lake City, Utah, you can go to the actual East High School from High School Musical, where they filmed all three High School Musical movies, and
What?
it's actually named East High School, and they encourage and allow public tours of East High School. So
Dude.
I visited East High School, and I did not go inside because it was closed for the summer, but
Yeah.
I was outside. I was outside the famous front entrance, and then I went on the football field where they
Man,
filmed the end of High School Musical 3.
that's crazy. Did you do any songs? Did you do any singing while you were there? I know if I went to the
I did
basketball
not.
court, I'd be trying to be like I was in the movie.
I was just in. I was having a true moment because I really
Yeah,
loved those movies.
yeah,
It was definitely an era for Disney Channel.
yeah,
That was a prime peak era for all those stars that got famous.
yeah,
Zac Efron's first movie, Vanessa Hudgens, Ashley Tisdale, Miley Cyrus with Hannah Montana, Selena Gomez, you
yeah.
know, all those people started with Disney Channel. So, High School Musical was definitely an era for Disney Channel movies, and it was cool to see East High School.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. So, if people want to see some really good locations, what's kind of the top 5 locations that you would say that people should go visit?
So this isn't Los Angeles specific,
Yeah,
but this is based on because a lot of places that you go to, you just get one shot and then you're on the go, you keep moving. But
yeah,
if you want multiple shots from the same movie in one area, here are my top 5 locations. So, what got me into All About Los Angeles were 2 subjects, Disney history and the movie Back to the Future.
yes,
So, so Back to the Future was filmed all around Los Angeles in a small area. You can go to all the Back to the Future locations all in one day, whether it be the Puente Hills Mall, which was the
yeah,
Twin Pines Mall in Back to the Future,
yeah,
where the Libby and Chase is. You have the McFly House kind of near Burbank. You got the Burger King
yeah,
that Marty McFly skates out of. You got the Gamble House, which was Doc Brown's mansion in Pasadena. So
man,
Back to the Future, that's a very iconic movie, and to me, it's more than a movie.
yeah,
It's more of a lifestyle. Definitely a cult classic. Back to the Future,
totally.
my all-time favorite movie. But a lot of Back to the Future locations are all around Los Angeles. And if you want to get crazy and go to Jamestown, California, out near Modesto, that's where they filmed Back to the Future 3.
Okay,
I've never been there. I've never been there yet, but I would love to go there. I have the coordinates down. I have all the shots. People have done it, and I need to go there next.
do you want to know something super funny? Emily grew up in Sonora, and we go up there quite often, and Jamestown is like a 10-minute drive. So we drive through Jamestown like almost every month. And so I'm like, we just need to stop at the Back to the Future 3 locations. I'll get some
Dude, they have
photos for you.
they have a museum with one of the trains from the movie on
That's,
display and a couple other items. So I forget which museum it is, and they have
yeah,
an event coming up in Jamestown. I'll send you the flyer,
yeah,
but that's the only location I haven't been to. But yeah, Back to the Future locations in Los Angeles. That's my number one location for anyone that wants to go Back to the Future, visiting LA. And I live in Anaheim, California, even though
yeah,
I'm all about Los Angeles.
yeah.
I live right down the street from Disneyland. But Los Angeles, on a good day, 35, 45 minutes, but
Nice.
it flies by if you're just putting on music,
Yeah,
driving down. It's all routine, but it's a very short drive from Anaheim. So
I
yeah,
love
Back to
that.
the Future. Number 2, I was just in Salt Lake City, Utah for the Sandlot 30th anniversary event.
Oh,
And so I was on the actual Sandlot where
dude.
the kids played baseball in the movie, the actual Sandlot. They had a big event with 7 of the 9 cast members
Oh my
30
gosh.
30 years later. And I was talking with them and hanging out with all of them. And
Man.
I hit the whole Salt Lake City for the movie locations. But if
Yeah.
anyone ever goes to Salt Lake City, visit the Sandlot movie locations. You have all the movie locations: Vincent Drugstore, Small's house, Benny the Jet's house, and the actual Sandlot where they played all the baseball from the movie The Sandlot.
That
Salt Lake
is
City, Utah.
awesome. Didn't know that was filmed there. That's amazing.
And it's crazy because it's based in the San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles, in the early 1960s, but they filmed it in Salt Lake City, but it's based in LA.
That's insane, man.
And if anyone goes to Hollywood, a very easy recent movie to go visit is the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Oh
directed
yeah.
by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it's a very loving homage and tribute to old Hollywood, old Los Angeles. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, starring Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Margot Robbie. directed by Quentin Tarantino. There's a lot of cool locations you can visit
That's awesome.
in Los Angeles, including the El Coyote, where Sharon Tate had her last meal before the
Man.
whole Manson dilemma.
Yeah.
You have Casa Vega, one of my favorite Mexican food restaurants in Los Angeles. And you got just a lot of old Hollywood, the Grauman's Chinese Theater that is in LA, that is
Yeah.
in Hollywood. So, first is Back to the Future, 2, The Sandlot, 3, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Number 4, when I went to Disney World, I always try to find out what is around me, no matter where I go. And it's a very fun way to travel, man, finding out
Yeah.
movie locations and historic landmarks, like what is around you that you're
Yeah.
going through. So I was in Disney World and I saw 2 hours away was the Edward Scissorhands house, the house from Edward Scissorhands.
That's
Um,
in
and,
Florida.
and yeah, it's in Tampa, Florida,
It's
about
crazy.
2 hours from Orlando.
Yeah.
And I lined up a lot of movie shots at that house. Tim Burton filmed inside and outside of that house in the backyard, and there's a lot of stuff that you can match up. And it
Dude,
was very cool to see.
you actually got to go inside, right? I saw the photos of inside the. Did you just kind of knock and go in there, or message them, or how did you do that?
Yeah. So most of the time, I'm very respectful
Yeah.
in getting the shot. I won't really trespass or cause any problems, but
Yeah.
sometimes you got to get the shot.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're there for the photo. You traveled all the way out there. It's right in front of you. You got to get the shot. But
Yeah.
luckily, I got in touch with the owner of the home. I found a
Yeah.
contact and I got in touch with the owner of the home, and we set up a time for me to go visit. So he was very accommodating and let me take all the pictures. I was in the kitchen and saw the mushroom wallpaper, and there's a lot of original stuff from the Edward Scissorhands. So if you're a fan of Edward Scissorhands and you go to Orlando, about 2 hours away is the house.
Yeah, definitely go check this out on his page. It was pretty amazing seeing that because it does still have that same exact feel like from the movie. Like when it
Yeah, the
goes
whole
through that neighborhood, it's very Tim Burton 70s feel, and it still literally feels like that. It's so awesome.
yeah, all the colorful houses and stuff, and
Yeah.
you can line all that up. It was an actual neighborhood near
Man,
Tampa, Florida.
I love
So you
that.
can just Google the information for that. Number 4, I would recommend if anyone ever goes to like Phoenix, Arizona, about 2 hours from there, you got Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah.
And kind of near Tucson, Arizona is a movie set that is open to the public. It's called the Mescal Movie Set in Benson, Arizona. There was a lot of movies filmed there. Quick and the Dead with Leonardo DiCaprio was filmed there. But most famously, the movie Tombstone was filmed at the Mescal Movie Set. So the whole
Man.
Tombstone town,
Yeah.
that was not Tombstone, Arizona. That was the Mescal Movie Set in Benson, Arizona that they used for Tombstone. And I got the opportunity to visit that set
Yeah.
during a public opening, and I lined up all the Tombstone shots. And if you love the movie Tombstone, you can be in the movie Tombstone by going to the filming location of the town, the pool hall, the OK Corral, like all those sets is the
That's
Mescal movie set in Benson, Arizona. So if you want to line up many shots from Tombstone, the Mescal movie set in Benson, Arizona.
that's awesome. How far is that from like LA? Like let's say someone's down there.
I would say about 8 hours
Oh,
from
8 hours.
LA.
Okay, man.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of
Yeah.
Arizona Disney fans who might be listening, and they might be close to that. That's awesome.
Hey, it's all about, just finding the history around you. So if there's any Disney fans that live in Phoenix
Yeah.
that are listening, check out the Mescal movie set.
So sick.
And number 5, this is kind of near LA. It's in a city called Chatsworth, a little less than an hour from LA, but there's a nice hiking trail. It's a very steep hiking trail called the Rocky Peak Hiking Trail. And about a mile up is where they filmed an episode of The Mandalorian. And The Mandalorian is all like green screen and CGI, but they
Yeah.
actually filmed on location. It is season 2, episode 6, chapter 14, called The Tragedy, where Grogu is on the Seeing Spires and Boba Fett comes down, and that's the first time you ever see Boba Fett. And they have that big stormtrooper battle on on the planet Tython. That
Yeah.
is the Rocky Peak Trail in Chatsworth, California. And you can line up the whole Stormtroop battle with the Mandalorian and Boba Fett. And if you're a Mandalorian fan and you want to visit where they filmed it, the Rocky Peak Trail in Chatsworth, California.
Dude, that is, I remember seeing your photo on that too, because literally
Hmm.
almost everything was filmed in the volume, right? Like that green screen room that they have built. But that's crazy that they went out to like an actual filming location for that. And that was Robert Rodriguez, right? Who I think directed that episode. And so it was like very
Right.
action packed,
Right.
and you know, you have Boba coming in there for the first time. And so yeah, that was awesome. When I saw your photo, I was like, oh, I didn't know this was at a real place. So awesome. So okay, you talked that you went to Utah, you went to Arizona, you went to Florida. How far have you gone? Like most locations I would assume are in LA, but what's the furthest you've ever been to visit a location?
So from LA, the farthest I've flown to was probably Orlando.
Okay,
And I
yeah.
went to the Edward Scissorhands house. And not only the Edward Scissorhands house, but you have the first Burger King building
Oh,
in Jacksonville, Florida, which is about 2 hours from Orlando. And
yeah.
it's not a Burger King anymore, but it is the original building where the first Burger King was in Jacksonville, Florida. So if you ever want to visit the first Burger King building, that's
Yeah.
in Jacksonville, Florida. And
Dang.
if you love the band Leonard Skinner,
Yeah.
they're from Jacksonville, Florida. A lot of their old landmarks are there, and their grave sites are out
Dude,
there in Jacksonville.
that's
So
awesome.
probably that. I went to Dallas, Texas. I went to the John F. Kennedy assassination location, and
Man.
learning about that event all through grade school and all our whole life seeing that Zapruder film, and
Yeah.
then being at the location, it was just pretty gnarly to be where a big piece of American history happened, and that was in Dallas, Texas.
That's
So
crazy.
that was an experience too. But I would really like to go to New York City as my
Yeah.
next location. That's so far away, New York City and Boston. But I'm very nervous to go because uh, every time I go to LA, if I hit 10 locations in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
I end up adding 10 more that night. So it's
Yeah.
never ending, and it's never ending in LA, and it's going to be never ending in New York City. So I'm
Yeah.
nervous to go to New York City because I'm not going to hit everything I want to do. It's going to
Yeah.
take me
Yeah.
weeks. It's going to take me years. So I'm
Man.
very nervous because I don't know where to hit and what to start. I really need to compile an efficient list. But
Yeah.
when I go out on location, I have a tripod, I have my phone, I have an Apple Watch, and I take my photos through my Apple Watch with the
Dude.
phone on the tripod. I rent a car. I'll compile the list in order on Google Maps, and
Yeah.
I'll just go. And I'll just do
Man.
it. And I'll fly there.
That's so sick. So wait, I know you've been to San Francisco too for some filming locations. Does it go in terms of like filming locations LA, then New York, then San Francisco? Or like does New York have more than San Francisco? When we're talking like
New
outside of
York,
LA area?
there's a lot out there, man. I mean,
Yeah.
LA is the epicenter of pop
Yeah.
culture, the birth of Hollywood. Like
Yeah.
LA is ground zero for this kind of stuff. But New York is an older city. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff out there. They film Saturday Night Live and a lot of
Yeah.
Broadway, and it's very iconic. But it's different out there. Just a different culture out there.
Yeah.
Um, and then Atlanta, Georgia has been growing,
That's
becoming
right.
the new LA. There's a lot
Yeah.
of tax breaks and a lot of filming opportunities in Atlanta, Georgia. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of filming that's been happening in Atlanta, Georgia.
Stranger Things, I know that for a fact, but a lot of movies as well
A
too,
lot of
right?
Marvel movies
A
too.
lot of Marvel
Yeah,
movies.
so,
Oh, man.
yeah. So that's on my list too.
So we've talked about all the crazy locations that you've, visited. Do you have any crazy stories from like any filming location trips? I'm sure like going around in LA, so much is happening, but do you have any just wild experiences that you've had as you've kind of done your adventures through LA?
Yeah, there's a few that actually come up in mind, but most of the time, like 99% of the time, I'll set up my shot, I'll get my video, I'll get my photo
Yeah.
at the historic location, and I'll pretty much be on the go because most of the time I'm racing against the sun, so I'm
Yeah.
really grabbing and going along the
Yeah.
whole way, trying to complete my list because traffic in Los Angeles
It's not fun.
is it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. You have to have patience, and there's You have to know your way around. But there's been some people that have given me weird looks as they're walking their dog. And,
Yeah.
I have business cards with my username and website that I
Yes,
hand
sir.
out if someone asks questions,
Yeah.
just to show more credibility, and I'll kind of educate them on the history. And I've
Yeah.
educated a lot of people walking by asking me what I'm doing there.
Dude.
So some people will just kindly ask what I'm doing there. But there's been
Yeah.
a few instances. I'm going to name 3 instances where they were not happy at me taking
Whoa.
photos.
Really?
But, I'm very respectful. I'm usually on public property, and that
Yeah.
includes a sidewalk or a street.
Yeah.
I'm usually not on the driveway. I'm nowhere on their private property. I am on a sidewalk or a street, which is public property.
Yeah.
So, location number one, there's a film noir movie that came out in the early 1940s starring Fred MacMurray and Barbara Stanwyck, and the movie was called Double Indemnity. So, the Deirdre house from the movie Double Indemnity, it's a classic movie. It started the film noir genre,
Yeah.
and it was directed by Billy Wilder. It's a old Hollywood classic. Check it
Yeah.
out, Double Indemnity. But I was across the street taking pictures of the house, and the lady came out of the house and asked me not to take photos, and asked me why I was taking photos, and I told her what I was doing, Double Indemnity,
Yeah.
and she kind of understood, and told me to kind of hurry up. But it was just the fact that I got confronted on that. But I told her what I was doing,
That was the owner of the
and
house
and
or across the street?
yeah,
That was the
yeah,
owner.
you know.
Man.
These people, usually should know what they're getting themselves into when they buy these
Yeah.
houses. And I know they know because they've been there for many years. So
Yeah.
they know the history of the home. So yeah, Double Indemnity was okay. But that was like the first time confrontation ever happened.
Yeah.
Second time, I was at Principal Strickland's house from the movie Back to the Future Part 2, where Marty goes up, he looks at the newspaper, he sees that it's 1985, but it's the alternate in 1985.
Yeah.
And then Strickland points a shotgun to his head, cocks it, and says, "Drop it, slacker." And then that drive-by, the guys come by with the drive-by
Yeah.
and try to shoot down the house. It was only shown for a short moment, but that home is right next to Whittier High School, which was Hill Valley High School in Back to the Future 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So the neighbor was mowing his lawn outside, and I was setting up my tripod outside and wanted to take pictures of the home, and I thought he'd be okay with me, and he told me don't take pictures of him and don't take pictures of his house.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and so I told him, "Do you know the history of your home?" And he said, "Yes, I do. Back to the Future." And I'm like, "Okay, then, you." And I told him he shouldn't be surprised with people visiting the location. Your address is easy to find through a Google search.
Yeah.
And I told him I was on the public street, and there's nothing you can do about it, and I'm just going to take my pictures and leave. And I was very nice and very respectful, but I told him, you have no say because I'm on the street right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got my photos. We were talking back and forth, mouthing off each other, and I got my shots and left. About a year later, I saw the house was up for sale. So that owner that
Dude.
was scolding me is not the current owner.
So he's just like, I'm done with all this.
He
Just
probably
trying to
didn't
sell
like
it.
the visitors,
Dude,
but
but
they're
if you're buying
most
it, if
people
you're
love
buying
it.
that house, like you have to know the history. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
crazy. I was thinking about like we also visited the like the Thriller house too, like that's in LA,
right,
right?
right.
From Michael
Oh
Jackson. Like
yeah,
if you're buying something
totally.
like that, any kind of house, you gotta expect it. You gotta expect it. It's awesome that you live there. Like be okay with the
Right.
photos, you know?
Most people cherish, they
Yeah.
love visitors, like the owners who own a lot of the houses from Friday, from the
Yeah.
movie Friday.
Yeah.
They love visitors going there, and
That's
the owner of
awesome.
the Marty McFly house, they love visitors going there. So
That's
most
cool.
people love it, and there's ever since the pandemic, more people are exploring filming locations
Yeah.
more than ever. Yeah,
That's
number
awesome.
3. So where just recently in Salt Lake City, Utah, the Sandlot 30th anniversary,
Wow.
everybody was out visiting filming locations, and once I flew in, I went straight to Benny, the little cul-de-sac from where Small's house was, and you
Yeah.
got Benny the Jet Rodriguez's house next door. So I was taking a picture in front of Small's house, which I just posted, came out perfectly. I just posted a Smalls photo from the Sandlot on my Instagram.
Oh man, you gotta check
But
that.
soon after I took that photo, the neighbor came out and confronted me and said, "You're not allowed to film my house." And I told her,
Dude.
"Yes, I can. I'm on the public street. I'm sorry." And she said, "That's not how it works." And I said, "Yes, it is how it works. I'm on public land, ma'am. Like this is public
Man.
street." And I know her house was used in documentaries and stuff, and
Yeah.
she probably thought I was a professional filmmaker. But
Ah, man.
regardless, once again, I'm very respectful, very nice,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
quiet when I visit these locations.
Yeah.
But if you're on the public street, there's nothing one can do whatsoever
Yeah. Seriously.
if
Man.
you're on the public street. So the lady that came out who owned Small's house wasn't happy I was taking pictures in front of her house.
Oh man. So be very sly if you go to that house.
But I've been to thousands of locations. It's all positive or it's very discreet, and
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
really gives me a hard time. But these are just 3 times, one in a million. That's happened like this.
Man. Okay, so we've talked about some weird owners of the house that might not be as fun, but in a fun way, have you ever had like a celebrity encounter while you've kind of been on your adventures in LA?
Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time,
Yeah.
but there are times where you'll run into a celebrity, or you can find like celebrity events. The Barnes and Noble
Nice.
at the Grove Shopping Center hosts a lot of celebrity events
Oh man.
that if you buy, like they'll either do a CD signing or a book signing, and if you buy their book, you get a wristband to get in line for the meet and greet. And so
Nice.
a couple planned celebrity signings that I've done. I met Paris Hilton at her book
Nice.
signing. She was very nice. I met the band Måneskin
Oh yeah.
at one of their record signings. So, and that was
Nice.
all at Barnes and Noble at the Grove.
Man.
Next weekend, I'm going to Matthew McConaughey book signing, and
Oh
I'm going
dude.
to the day after. I'm going to Idina Menzel book signing,
Man, that's have you met
and
Matthew
so
before? Is that gonna be your first time?
no, I have not. But through the Barnes and Noble at the
Yeah.
Grove, if you buy the book on their website on the event page, if you buy their book, that's your automatic ticket to meet Matthew.
Dude, that's all.
So there's a lot of easy ways to meet celebrities through
Yeah.
these book signings or CD signings, or you just have to know where to look.
Is it mainly that location? And how would someone like Google search for that? Would they just say like Barnes and Noble, Grove? Where do you say Grove?
Yeah, Barnes and Noble at the Grove Shopping
At the
Center
Grove
next to
Shopping
the
Center.
CBS studios.
Okay, and you could just kind of search that and see if there's any events coming up, and then try to
Yeah,
find that
check out the
photo.
Barnes and Noble. The Barnes and Noble Grove Instagram page has a lot. But
Dude.
so those were planned events, but here are a few unplanned events. So I was at the Pantages. I saw Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys, in concert at the
Oh,
Pantages Theater in Hollywood,
dude.
and It was a great concert. Loved Brian Wilson. He's the
Yeah.
American Paul McCartney. So
Yeah.
I was walking out of Brian Wilson's concert on Hollywood Boulevard out of the Pantages, and I was walking across the street, across the crosswalk, with about 50 other people. The show just ended. We're all walking
Yeah.
our car, and my eyes are always peeled. You just have to I'm always just alert everywhere I go. Cars running red lights,
Yeah.
just whatever. I'm just always alert. But I look to my left, and guess who's crossing the street with me? Drew Carey.
Oh, what?
So I recognize Drew Carey walking right next to me. He wasn't wearing
Dude.
his glasses, and I kind of tap him. I'm like, "Hey, are you Drew Carey?" He's like, "Yes, I am." So he stopped for a quick second. We exchanged greetings. I asked for a photo. I shake his hand. He was very nice. Drew Carey was awesome. I
Yeah.
went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Why would I go to Tulsa, Oklahoma? Well, they have a museum there. There's a movie called The Outsiders from the early 1980s. The
Yeah.
Outsiders, directed by Francis Ford Coppola,
Yeah.
and it stars an A-list cast. You have C. Thomas Howell, Patrick Swayze, Tom Cruise, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe. Like, it's these
Man.
guys' first movie. Ralph Macchio, like, all in
Oh
one
my
movie, The
gosh.
Outsiders. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's called The Outsiders. A book. It's based on a book written by S.E. Hinton, and there's a museum that is now a museum, but it was the house from the movie
Man.
that Patrick Swayze and Rob Lowe and C. Thomas Howell lived in. They were the Curtis brothers, and
Yeah.
it's called the Outsiders House Museum that you could visit. But I was there just for a Friday through Monday weekend visiting the Outsiders house, and and I was taking pictures there, and I was in one of the rooms, and I looked to my left again here, and standing to my left is Brendan Fraser.
What? That's
And
crazy.
Brendan Fraser is at the Outsiders house in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at the same time as I am,
Dude,
in the
that's
same room.
crazy.
And so I asked Brendan, I'm like, what the hell are you doing at the Outsiders house in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Oh
He
my
said,
gosh.
he told me, I'm filming a movie about an hour away. It's called Killer of the Flower Moon, directed by
Oh,
Martin Scorsese. And I'm filming that
man.
movie right now, and I'm here visiting.
Dude, that's insane. That's
And
crazy.
that movie's about to come out in theaters right now.
Oh my gosh. So when
The
was that? Was
trailer
that
was
like
just released.
this year or last year that
I
you
saw
ran into him?
that was September 2021. They're
Okay.
filming it, and they just dropped the trailer for that movie.
I love that he's like a cinephile as well. You know, he just wanted to visit this house probably. Dude, was that kind of what it
Yeah,
was? He just wanted to visit a filming location? Like,
yeah, because I mean, it's an iconic movie.
yeah.
It started the career of Tom Cruise, Patrick Swayze,
Man,
Ralph Macchio, Emilio Estevez, all in one movie. It was
that's
like their first
insane.
movie.
Man, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Any others just kind of random, here and there meet and greets?
Yeah, so I went to Dallas, Texas for a convention called Fan Expo Dallas in 2019.
Nice.
And I was there to meet the Back to the Future cast, the
Oh
cast of
man.
Back to the Future, and 5 original cast members were there.
Man.
Since that's my favorite movie, since Back to the Future is my favorite movie, I felt like I've done everything. I've visited the locations,
Yeah.
I own props, I've seen the movie millions of times. I met minor cast members, but I've never met the major big five.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity to meet Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd,
Dude.
Tom Wilson, who plays Biff,
Yeah.
Leah Thompson, that plays Lorraine, and James Tolkien, that plays Principal Strickland. I met all 5 of them. I got a
That's
picture with
crazy.
all 5 of them. I had a moment with all 5 of them, and it was cool to meet the original cast of Back to the Future.
That is the coolest thing, dude. That is so awesome.
All 5 together in one photo.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I do remember seeing that photo, and that must have been just so crazy to see those people in person all together. That's
Yeah,
insane.
that was my best favorite celebrity encounter. I've met a ton of Disney legends. I've met Bill Farmer, who's the voice of Goofy
Yeah.
and Pluto. It was cool to meet him. I've met Bob Gurr. He was the designer of the monorail, the Haunted
Yeah.
Mansion Dune buggy, the People Mover vehicle, the
Dude.
monorail, and the Matterhorn
Yeah.
bobsled, like Autopia car, like anything on wheels. Bob Gurr designed
Dude, that's so awesome.
the Disneyland fire
Such a
truck as
legend.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met Bob Gurr. I've met Marty Sklar before he passed.
Ah, yeah, rest in
Rest in
peace.
peace, Marty Sklar.
Yeah.
Richard Sherman. I met him. So it's funny how
Oh
I met
man.
Richard Sherman. Um, it was a very weird. I mean, he was nice, but he was the last person I would expect to be where I was. I was at the movie premiere Love and Mercy, starring John Cusack and Elizabeth Banks. But
Yeah.
the movie Love and Mercy is based off of Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys,
Yeah.
and it's a biopic of his life. It's called Love and Mercy. But I was at the
So
movie
good.
premiere in Beverly Hills. I was at the movie premiere, and we were at the catering table getting food, and I see Richard Sherman scooping mashed
What?
potatoes,
Oh my.
and and um, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" So I go up to Richard and I ask him, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just enjoying the food and having a good time." The next day it hit me. Richard was very friendly. He took a picture. He talked for a short moment,
Yeah.
and then he was on his way. But it hit me
Man.
the next day on the relation between the Beach Boys and the Sherman Brothers, and there is a
Oh.
relation. So there's a movie with Annette Funicello called The Monkey's Uncle,
Okay.
starring Annette Funicello.
Yeah.
And the very beginning of that movie is a song with the Beach Boys and Annette called The Monkey's Uncle. And that song was written by the Sherman Brothers.
Dude, that's crazy. That's amazing. Was
Yeah.
Brian Wilson at that premiere as well, or
He
is
was.
it?
The movie
He was
was
okay.
the movie was yeah, so the movie was based on his life. So he
Yeah.
was there.
It's such a good movie. If anyone listening has not seen it, it's a hard watch at some points, but it is just so well done. It is so awesome, dude. But the
Yeah,
Sherman
Brian
brothers
Wilson.
are iconic. That's crazy that you were able to meet Richard.
Sherman Brothers, yep. And then a kind of recent Disney legend within the last 20 years, Tim Allen.
Oh yeah,
Buzz Lightyear is my favorite
dude,
character,
the
and he was
best.
always my favorite character until I met Tim Allen. He was even more my favorite character.
Oh, I thought you were going to
Tim
say
Allen,
until I met him, and then he was terrible. I'm so glad
Tim
he's
Allen
cool.
was awesome.
Where did you meet
Tim,
him? Was that?
I met Tim Allen in the parking lot of the Hollywood Laugh Factory on Sunset Boulevard, and he was
Dude.
having a stand up comedy show that night that I was going to, and I got there a little early to park
Yeah.
and go grab something to eat. And when I parked my car, he was hanging out in the parking lot, and I walk up to him. I'm
What?
like, "Oh, Tim Allen, like, what are you doing?" And he was hanging out, and we were talking for a good while, me and my friend and Tim
Dude,
Allen, and uh, and he was very nice. Tim
that
Allen,
is
he was
so
awesome.
awesome. We talked about like top filming locations too, which were Back to the Future. Do you have any dream film locations that you've always wanted to travel to and you haven't been to yet? What's kind of like your next goal that you want to hit up?
Yeah, so there's a lot of filming locations here and there, but I really want to visit a lot of the first restaurants or first fast food restaurants.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them in California that I've already visited. You have the first Carl's Jr. here in Anaheim. You have the
Oh, that's
first
crazy.
McDonald's in San Bernardino, which
Uh,
doesn't exist anymore. The oldest McDonald's is in Downey, California, which is kind of near Anaheim.
yeah.
You have the first Taco Bell. The
Oh,
building is in the headquarters in Irvine, California, in a parking lot at the
dude.
Taco Bell headquarters that you can just drive up to. The very first Taco Bell building is
Is in
right
the
there.
headquarters?
Yeah,
I've
just sitting
driven
in the
past the
parking lot, the
headquarters.
actual building.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
so right off that freeway is the Taco Bell headquarters. It's in the parking lot if you want to see the first Taco Bell building.
That's
The
awesome.
first Wiener Schnitzel was in Wilmington. You got the first Wiener
Man.
Schnitzel out there. The
Yeah.
first Del Taco is in Barstow, California.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so many first restaurants
Yeah.
are out there. So I want to try to travel around. I went to the first KFC in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I want to go to
Man.
like the first Wendy's in Columbus, Ohio,
Yeah.
the first Krispy Kreme in North Carolina.
I love it. But yeah, is there any other thing as we close out, like any other thing that kind of came to mind, whether it's someplace you've already visited, another place that you do want to visit, any other crazy stories before we close out?
So there's tons of pictures of Walt Disney in Disneyland that you can line up. Walt Disney only saw 11 years of Disneyland, but there's tons of pictures of Walt standing in front of iconic landmarks in Disneyland. Like there's a picture of Walt Disney standing in front of the petrified tree in
Yeah.
Frontierland. There's a debate on what the oldest attraction is in Disneyland. Could it be the petrified tree? Yes, but could it also be the King Arthur Carousel? Yes,
Yeah.
since those horses are original, over 100 years old, hand painted.
Dude, it's crazy.
So it's either the petrified tree or the King Arthur Carousel as the oldest attraction at Disneyland. And then there's two other historic events that are Walt Disney World related.
Yeah.
But the Contemporary Hotel, I recently went to the Contemporary Hotel. In one of the conference rooms is the room where President Nixon gave the "I'm not a crook" speech after the whole Watergate scandal. But
Whoa.
there's a room in the Contemporary Hotel where Nixon gave that famous speech, "I'm not a crook," which you can check out on YouTube. And that's a very famous speech
He was
from Nixon. And that took place in the Contemporary Hotel in the Ballroom of the Americas in the Contemporary Hotel. I've
he
been to
was
that
in
room.
Disney World at the time. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude.
Yep. Early 1970s. And then, the official breakup of the Beatles happened at the Polynesian Hotel. And John Lennon was staying at the Polynesian Hotel, and he was delivered the paperwork and the contract to sign to officially end the Beatles, and he signed
Oh
that
my
contract
gosh.
while he was staying at the Polynesian Hotel.
Dude, that is so sad, but also so crazy. All right, dude. Shaun, it was so great having you on this episode. Can you tell our listeners once again where people can find you and all your amazing photos?
Yeah, guys, my name is Shaun from All About Los Angeles, and you can find me on Instagram, TikTok at All About Los Angeles, Twitter at AA Los Angeles, and YouTube All About Los Angeles, and at allaboutlosangeles.com.
Awesome, dude. Thanks again for coming on our show. We'll be syncing up. I'm sure hopefully we'll have to hit up a ride down there when we're in Disneyland next. That'll be so much fun.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and nice talking. Thank you very much.
Awesome, dude. See you later. Bye. Shaun, thank you so much again for joining the happiest hour on earth. It meant so much. You have so many amazing stories, so many cool locations you've been, so much Disney history. I learned so much in this episode, and I know our listeners are going to as well. But thank you so much for joining our show again. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We are very close to our baby being here. We have some episodes pre-recorded. You know, episodes might look a little bit different. Sometimes it might just be me. Sometimes it might be just quick, shorter episodes. Maybe we'll have an episode where we have our baby on the episode, which will be really fun. But we can't thank you enough for your support. It truly means so much to me, Emily, and our entire family. If you are listening on YouTube, if you want to go ahead and click subscribe or follow on a podcasting platform, it really helps out our show a lot. But I just want to say we love you. Thank you so much for your support, and we will see you all next week. Have a good one. Bye.